pleasure to welcome everyone. I see the attendance is quite good. I'm happy to welcome all of you to our 2020 Youth Day event. We have an annual Youth Day event, and last year's one was a success, and this year's one is definitely also going to be a success. I hope everyone can see me and the light is not too bright on my face. Is everything good?
It's good.
All right. So the day, so the program for our day today is we're going to be requesting everyone to please mute their mics. As Annette indicated, if you have something to say or you'd like to pose a question, please do so on the comments or the chat portion. And I will facilitate the questions or pose the questions to our speakers on the floor. We have a great panel today, and just a brief introduction or background. I'm Jabu Mashiane, the chairperson of the Youth Committee for the Compliance Institute of Southern Africa. Today we have interesting speakers in our panel, being Reino Krauser from Mediclinic, Paul Hudson-Berg from the JCE, and Bongani Zikali from the IDC. And how the day is going to be, we're going to start with a short introductory video. We will then kickstart our panel discussion after the video. And we're also going to give our CEO, Riani, some time to speak to us. We're also going to have a Mentimeter quiz, which is going to be an exciting part of today because there's an awesome prize to be won. I hope everyone is looking forward to that prize. I'll make sure that I don't play this year because it might be a bit unfair.
I think all the committee members must excuse themselves from that competition.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That's not fair.
Sorry.
Can I, my apologies, can I just ask if you're not a speaker, will you please just switch off your video? Thanks. Okay, thanks.
Carl, can you please also switch off your video? All right. So with your permission, I would like to share a brief introductory video. I think it's going to lead the discussion for our theme today, being the ultimate disruption. I'm sure everyone from whatever industry and whatever background, even in your personal lives, have been disrupted by the pandemic, the COVID-19. We have themed our day for today being the ultimate disruptor because all of us have been disrupted. And despite this disruption, I'm sure we're all looking forward to seeing heroes emerging from our different industries, even in our personal lives. Some of our children are also experiencing a bad disruption because they're missing their school teachers, they're missing their school friends, and we're now going to take it into our specific function, being compliance. So if, with your permission, I'd like to share a video. If you could bear with me for a moment.
So really what we looked for was a space that can accommodate the numbers that we need in one place so that we can have health personnel and everybody working in one space. So at the end, we'll have 2,200 beds here. And that means that we can put all our resources into one space. It also doesn't create a logistical nightmare for the Department of Health. It took us having to install sanitation services to be able to install water and reticulation in the area. We've also put up electricity. So basically the Shell does have points for drainage points for electricity, but we've had to sort of open up the ducts, as you can see, and that's what they're doing now, to be able to lift those, connect the piping that we've put up to the sanitation system that's here. So even the construction industry has got on board to put in 2 shifts of 24 hours, 7 days a week. They're going above and beyond their ordinary call of duty to be able to make sure that by the time we get to level 4, this 500 beds will be ready. We still have a pressing need of medical equipment here at this space, and that is why we left the ICU and high care beds for the 3rd phase. So we need ventilators, we need hospital beds, we need medical equipment, and we need sponsors with, again, deep pockets to come on board so that the odds and ends that we're still left with here, we can see to them from the private sector funding, and that we can make sure that we really stretch our resources.
Let us come together and also play our part. To donate to this life-saving intervention, email covid19.donations@gauteng.gov.za or call us on 072 633 0555.
I would like us to pause on this screen for a moment and appreciate that we are aware that most of the healthcare workers in the front line are seen as the heroes, helping and trying to save our lives during this pandemic. There's a big demand for healthcare services, for healthcare workers. They are risking their lives in order to try and make sure that they take care of us. And the preaching that has been happening from government has been that we need to stay at home under lockdown and allow the healthcare service workers to work and try and help us as much as we can, and we can help them by staying at home, hence the lockdown. I will then introduce our speakers, but before I do that, I almost forgot. I would like everyone to be on their cell phone or just keep their cell phones close by, because we're gonna be giving out the link to our Mentimeter quiz as well as the code that you will enter into the Mentimeter quiz so that you can be able to participate in the quiz. The questions from the quiz are going to arise from our discussion from all 3 speakers that we have on the floor, and if you listen attentively, I am sure you'll be able to get all the questions right and hopefully be the one to win the awesome prize that's coming. I will hand over later to one of my colleagues, Norelise. She'll give you the rules and breakdown as to how we're going to conduct the Mentimeter quiz. All right. So from our speakers, I would like to firstly introduce Bongani Zikalala. He is the one standing up right now. So Bongani holds a BSc in biochemistry and genetics. He has an environmental law certificate, a compliance management certificate, a postgraduate in business administration. He also, I would like to announce, has recently completed his MBA. I don't know why he's walking away now.
Sorry.
I was saying Bongani just recently completed his MBA and would like to congratulate him so much. It's a big achievement, Bongani. Well done.
Thank you, Chairman.
On our
sorry.
panel,
Yeah, sorry, Jabu. I keep walking up and down because our offices have they switch off if you don't move around for some time. So I constantly need to wave my hand or do something. But it's something I'll speak about. It's good. It's business preparedness. But anyway, we'll get it.
Thanks, Bongani. We also have Reino Krauser from Mediclinic. Reino has a BCom financial accounting. He also has an advanced diploma in risk management. He has a long career, a history, and experience in internal auditing, external auditing, risk management, and he's also the hospital general manager, or he was the hospital general manager at Mediclinic. We also have Paul Hudzenberg from the JSE. Paul has a BA in clinical psychology. He also has a BA honors in clinical psychology. He then decided, no, I might want to switch over to the legal space. He then obtained his LLB. He became an advocate at the Cape Bar practice for some time at the Cape Bar, and he came back into compliance and is now the head of compliance at the JCE. I hope I've done justice to all of you guys. I know it was a brief introduction, but I can assure our guests that we have experienced practitioners on the floor today in our panel. So Bongani will speak to us mainly on BCM, what BCM is. I don't know what BCM, so he'll have to enlighten us on what BCM is. Reno is from the health industry, so he'll be taking us through the challenges that they're going through in the health services space, how they're emerging as heroes despite the pandemic, and what measures they've put in place from a compliance perspective in order to help them stay compliant with all the regulations that are happening in the health services space. And we have Paul Hartzenberg. He'll be speaking to us because of his background in psychology. He's the perfect person to try and speak to us about our mindsets and how we can be compliance officers that are able to emerge as heroes despite this pandemic and any other pandemics or challenges that can come in the future. I will therefore hand over to Bongani to give us what he would like to share to us today.
All right. Thank you very much, Jabu. I must acknowledge Riani as well as the CEO of KISA. I think the fact that we having this event, I remember when we were doing the planning, there was some thoughts around, you know, it might be difficult to do something. I think the fact that we actually having these events, and thank you, Paul, thank you, Reno, for coming on board as well. Thank you to everyone, welcome everyone who's joined us as well. The fact that we're having this event talks to what I want to speak about, business continuity management and having resilience to still continue to do the work that you need to do for businesses to still continue, you know, generating value and capturing value, even in the middle of these uncertain times. So certainly the three of us, experienced as we are not going to tell you this is what you need to do to manage as compliance officers, help your businesses thrive. However, I like what Paul is going to talk about. There's a certain mindset that one needs to adapt in times of uncertainty. And it feeds into what I want to speak about, because as compliance officers, I'm sure, you know, we, on a daily basis, we're always trying to protect the business against the risk of regulatory fines and so on and so forth. I think compliance officers can be heroes and go a step further and assist businesses to cope and adapt and manage to situations just like we find ourselves in now. So that's how I'll position it, under the theme, under the banner of the ultimate disruptor. We as compliance officers can be business continuity superheroes. We can ensure that businesses continue. So it's very easy to speak about reactions. How can we react once we have the pandemic? I mean, nationally, we have the Disaster Management Act. It was there for situations like these, in case anything such as the pandemic happens. It details, you know, what processes need to be followed, declares the country to be in a state of emergency, and certain processes follow after that. We've been seeing all the regulations that keep coming out. It's preparedness. That is part of what I want to talk about. Just businesses being prepared for things like these. Don't get me wrong. No one could have seen this coming. No one could have predicted this, but we find ourselves here. I will talk a bit about what can be done in the interim to cope, for businesses to cope, or for compliance officers to cope. And I'm sure Paul will talk to that as well. Reno will give us a perfect illustration of how it's been happening at the hospitals. I'm more than certain it's been very difficult. So there are things we can do now to react. However, I really want to go back and say, you know, 4 years ago, had some companies put together business continuity strategies and plans, they could have dealt better with this pandemic. I mean, most of the guys I'm assuming here are quite young, so you might live through another pandemic. You'd be in a better position to respond, you know, than perhaps what was done currently. So with that said, I won't teach you what BCM is. Instead, I decided, let me, Jabu, with your permission, maybe the Institute can make available certain resources. For instance, the Business Continuity Institute, you know, we can have a link to their website. There's a whole lot of resources that are there. I'll just touch on them, but it's more the principle of business continuity I want to talk about. So I don't know, if it was an open session, I'd ask for a show of hands. How many compliance officers have actually dealt with business continuity, or at some point have had to assist the business to put together a BCM plan or anything like that? It might be tricky to ask everyone to raise their hands now on Teams, but let's assume, you know, 80% of us may have an idea, but typically, because BCM is not legislated, yes.
Sorry, Bongani. Yeah, Bongani, you can ask people to in the chat room to respond to your questions.
Brilliant, brilliant. Thank you, Riani. Yes, if anyone's got interesting insight around BCM, basically saying I've dealt with it, I know what it is. The reason I would assume not a lot of compliance officers are aware of it is it's not legislated. So there's no piece of legislation compelling organizations to comply with something. And we know ourselves, if it's in law, then compliance is invoked. But if it's not legislative, you know, it can be a gray area. So I got involved with BCM because I support the risk management department. I help them with their risk, regulatory risk universes, mapping out all their systems, trying to find out where there's potential compliance risk. So as I was working through that, I noticed that it is not well supported by organizations as well. You will typically hear, what is the worst thing that can happen? And a paper cut seems to be the worst thing that can happen. And we have legislation for that. We have the Occupational Health and Safety Act. But it depends on the environment. I mean, our typical corporate environments, our office spaces. So, you know, there is an argument to be made to say, this is not a mine. There's very low likelihood of fatalities. And I mean, South Africa is not a high terrorist country. So for instance, there's a low likelihood that, you know, our business might be disrupted due to, for instance, a civil war or a terrorist attack and so on and so forth. Which is fair enough. You know, business leaders sometimes try and manage what is foreseeable and can be quantified. I'll repeat, I don't think anyone saw this coming, just like no one saw some people saw the great financial crash looming. However, you know, proper preparedness for it wasn't there. So it's something that's not very well supported, not very well understood by business leaders. I think as compliance officers, and that's the nub of what I'm trying to say, and we can have a debate around that. Maybe you guys can share with me some of the challenges that might come with trying to convince senior management to set aside money and prepare for eventualities that might never happen. Sorry, looking weird. Otherwise, I just look like I'm in the back.
I think, Bongani, on that note, I would like to pull in Reno for him to take us through what they're currently going through in the health services space. It is going to touch a bit to the BCM that you're telling us about. I will therefore hand over to Reno to give us a brief introduction as to what he's going to be sharing with us today. Over to you, Reno.
Jabu, thank you very much, and welcome everyone. Also, thank you to Riani, a former colleague of mine and also good friend. So thank you for the opportunity to talk to you today. I think, yes, it's been quite a challenging time for us in the healthcare space. Obviously, a pandemic is one of those almost black swan events that everyone always puts on their risk registers, but no one really takes it seriously. I think, luckily, at hospital level, we are quite strict in terms of readiness plans. We have very good readiness plans. We've got health and safety committees and all those, but COVID-19 has changed everything. It's we've had to really adapt everything and start working from scratch in a new way that we've never worked before. So I think what's been the biggest challenge with COVID at this stage is you've got so many different role players and so many different experts and different opinions, and what's right on a Tuesday is not necessarily right on a Wednesday. So what we've really found is, if I can take as an example now, is our biggest risk when this whole pandemic started was having enough ventilators and, do we have enough beds? Now we've got more than enough beds, we've got enough ventilators, but do we have the staff to be able to service those beds? So it's an ever-changing landscape. In terms of what we've found is really critical during a time like this is we really had to adapt our readiness plan, and not only draft the readiness plan very quickly, but also be able to make changes very quickly and train your staff, obviously, because do a lot of mock drills, a lot of scenario planning and testing. Those sort of tests become very important because people don't necessarily read the plans, but if they go through it once or twice, that really works. In terms of the lockdown, I know a lot of people are criticizing the lockdown, but what it has done for us as a hospital group or a hospital in Potchefstroom is that it gave us time to prepare. It gave us time to train people, especially upskill people. If you think about ICU, a very specialized unit where you need specific skills, and it gave us a chance to upskill more than 20 nurses in this specific hospital that wouldn't have been able to deal with an ICU situation. You've got 20 additional staff that now can because of the time we had. So that's been a positive. I think what becomes very important once your readiness plans are in place is also your policies and guidelines. We've got changed, the laws and the regulations are changing on a weekly basis. They're telling us that some laws are not applicable, some regulations are no longer applicable. We're running around trying to figure out what's legal, what's not legal, what to do. And that's again where your compliance officer type role becomes very important. Someone needs to take that information, kind of condense it and say, these are the critical things, these are the changes, and monitor that we are indeed doing the right things. Once you've got your policies and your guidelines in place, you have to have very, very clear decision-making structures in place. We have 2 command centers at the hospital. One is an internal command center, which consists of staff only. And then we also have an external command center, which consists of doctors, staff from laboratories, radiology, all the different role players. And these decision-making structures need to be able to get together within 10, 15 minutes to make quick decisions, because you've got people's lives are at stake. We have logistical issues every day. You need to clean up beds to make space available, and very, very difficult decisions in a very short time to do it. I mentioned earlier your training of your people is critical. Scenario planning, testing, all those different things. And what we did at Potchefstroom, which is quite unique, that's not necessarily done in other hospitals, is we appointed one of our management members as a compliance officer for the duration of COVID-19 to serve that compliance officer role. Because we have a centralized office in Stellenbosch, obviously you cannot have a compliance officer sitting there ensuring that you are complying to what's happening in the Northwest, for example. So that role has really, for us, made a big difference to ensure that we are doing what we're supposed to. And then maybe this gets to what Paul is also going to talk about, but you can have all these fancy plans in place, but at the end of the day, it comes down to discipline. People need to be disciplined. They need to be able to adapt, and they need to be flexible. You cannot come in with the old mindset pre-COVID and still think you're going to do things the same way. Paul is going to talk very nicely about certain adjustments that you have to make at work, which is also the case here. We had, for example, 10 entrances at this hospital. We've now got 1. And I can't tell you the amount of pushback we've had from people that are now complaining and this and that. And it's just, there's a whole change of mindset, and people's attitude is really the most important thing in this whole exercise. So yeah, I think that's enough from me for now. I think I'll take any questions later on.
Thank you, Reno. Sikolele, can I please ask you to please switch off your camera? Thank you so much. I will then hand over to you, Paul, to take us through what you're going to be sharing with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you to you and Bongani and obviously Riani. Riani is also a former colleague of mine. I can't tell you when, it'll give away both of our ages. And she's also a friend. So thank you everybody for the opportunity, and thank you to Marelise too for getting me involved. It's a great pleasure to talk to everybody today. I think the main thing that I want to talk about is how one must have the right attitude, because that encompasses everything that we do. I was relating to the gentleman on the panel a little earlier this week and saying, you know, on the 9th of March, as much as we knew that there was a global pandemic, we were all operating in our offices without even the thought that we would be subject to the lockdown that we have been for in excess of 70 days. And so what that does is it throws everything on its head. This is, as the topic suggests, the ultimate disruptor. And we have to have the right attitude if we're going to survive it. I've spoken to colleagues, and perhaps let me relate first before I tell you about my colleagues. But before that time, obviously, as you know, the JSE, we have our office in Sandton. It is an electronically traded market, but we are all pretty much 400 odd people in the building. And I don't mean we're odd people, I mean we're roughly 400 people in the building. And so what that means is that all of those people, barring a very select few, had to leave the building on, I think it was around the 10th of March, if I'm not mistaken, and work from home. Now, we had invoked, as Bongani says, we had invoked our disaster recovery site a number of times, both for tests and for tests with our market, etc. But this level of working it from home had never been done before. I mean, what we hear a lot these days is the word unprecedented. I'm almost a little bit tired of it myself, but this was indeed unprecedented. We found ourselves the very next day being told to work from home and essentially run the markets, do everything that needs to be done from home. That is a big mind shift. And now let me get to my colleagues. On the front of the colleagues, I have seen my colleagues with 1 or 2 children draped on them. I have seen them not like I've seen them ever before. I mean, some of the ladies, I have seen their hair quite, obviously hairdressers are not allowed. I've seen their hair quite different. I've seen no makeup. I've seen lots of family members, pets. My own cat sometimes joins my meetings. We have seen a change in how we work. We've also seen that we've got to understand our colleagues better, and we've got to be kind to them, because our colleagues are homeschoolers, they're home maintenance people, they're managing perhaps difficult situations with family. They're doing all of that, and they've carved out a workplace within their homes. This is very disruptive to them as well. So one's attitude needs to be right. And you know, we can't do enough to say to people, you've got to remember to take time out. This idea of being ever connected could lead to burnout. It could lead to damage in relationships. It's a case of, I think people have the idea that if they're not visible in the office, they're terrified of being seen as not doing their work. And nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, I've found that people are far more productive now and far more committed to getting their work done. I mean, some of our mornings start at 7 with team calls to make sure that everything is ready for the markets to go, and end well into the evening, sometimes if there are delays. I mean, we've seen a lot of market volatility, and that adds to the stress. So not only do we see volatility and more trading on our markets, but we also see that happening with people not being near to each other, so they can't stand up and shout to their colleague what's going on on this particular matter, what's happening there. And they also have families to look after. So attitude is everything. I think, you know, people had said to me at the beginning of this year, when my strategy was primarily around conduct and ethics, and rolling out a new policy and some new training material in that regard, the last thing I would have said to them is, no, right now, in June, what I might be doing is I might be doing a phased return to the office plan. It never crossed my mind. I'm now involved in things that I've never been involved with before. I'm looking at our building with fresh eyes. So I'm sorry, I might be talking too much. So I think, Jabu, it's up to you to like raise the finger when it's time for me to stop, please. But I mean, for an example, we had biometric access to our building, which involves the pushing of your fingerprint at various access points. And that starts when one enters our building through the car park. So as you know, the regulations say that all biometric readers of that nature must be turned off. That adds a security element, but it also creates a health element. So now what do we do? So we, for argument's sake, we'll be looking at number plate recognition at the point of entry to the car park. But when one slams the door and you get out of your car with your case and etc., and you're going towards the lift, you need to push the button. That shouldn't happen. So now we're looking at buttons that are contactless. And the list goes on. I mean, you know, social distancing in a lift is perhaps an awkward situation, but you've got to say, well, you know, no more than 2 or 3 people in the lift at a given time. These are all factors that if you'd asked me at the beginning of the year, I wouldn't have given it a thought. In fact, our policy was we hold the lift. We used to hold the lift for people. So if people were still approaching, we didn't say quickly close the door. We said, welcome, you know, come on, get in, the more the merrier, etc. Let's get into work. So, and that's just the beginning. At our entrance to our main lifts to go up, we had turnstiles accompanied by the fingerprint recognition again. So I think what we're seeing now is also we've got to put in. I see a couple of hands up. Is that for me to stop? So what I'm trying to say is I think we've got to be adaptable. Both Reino and Bongani talked about being adaptable to change, being aware of change, but I want to add to that, those are both very important. We've got to be able to maintain ourselves too, so we've got to be kind to ourselves and kind to our employees as well. We've got to understand their circumstances. So if you're looking after children, you need to manage your time effectively. But I think I've been given the signal, so I'm going to sign off. But if you've got any questions, please raise them later on.
All right. Right, Paul, actually on your point, I'm gonna take from that because I'd just like to take everyone back to our 2019 Youth Day event where the theme was actually the compliance officer of the future. So none of us at that point knew that a few months later we'd all have to be forced to become the compliance officer of the future. The future is now. So I'm linking that to what Bongani spoke about, that most companies do have business continuity management processes and plans, strategies, whereby they've prepared for if there's a fire in the building, we simply move over to the next building. If there's a bomb scare in the area, we simply move to another building. So no one actually, to Bongani's point, prepared for a disaster such as the one we have now. And we were talking earlier in the week that what if the next one is an airborne disease? How are we going to be able to keep business moving, be ready for such an event? And Bongani, to the question maybe to pose to you is it enough the way business continuity management has been done or is being done by organizations around?
Can you ever say anything is enough? I mean, business by its very nature, I think you're operating, there are known knowns, there are always known unknowns. You know, you can't control what you do know. So definitely not. BCM will not, just by having a BCM plan doesn't mean you're prepared for every eventuality. So I tie it very closely to the strategic review process where business constantly, every year, does a 3-year, 5-year plan to say, what is the world, where is the world going? What do we want our business to look like in 4 or 5 years' time? So it's certainly an ongoing process, Jabu. I don't think you ever get to a stage where you're like, if a meteor were to hit the earth, we are ready for it, bring it. It's constantly, and part of the cycle, they call it a business continuity planning cycle. You're constantly revisiting your plans. Last year, we said the worst thing that could happen is a pandemic, where people can't touch each other, right? We look at it again and say, hey, but what if there's a pandemic that's airborne? It could literally kill millions within a day. You review your plan in line with that as well. So it's a constantly iterative process where you're constantly re-looking at what we have. Is it enough? Is it enough? So yes, you never get to a stage where you've mapped out everything, but certainly it's an ongoing process. I just want to touch on something Paul said, part of the preparedness. So Paul, I remember when we had to start working from home, those 3 days before lockdown, our IT was busy training people how to use Teams. People are still teaching themselves Teams even now. Our department had done a BCM test 2 months before. So it was my first time using Teams, but we had to use it. We tried out different functions. We blocked out time when we worked from home. We tested it. Now imagine if a business does this periodically, people get used to working from home, Paul. I'm seeing it now. Now we're finding out people have poor network where they live. Their computers are old. Psychologically as well, how do I work and make lunch and look after my wife, or vice versa? She looks after me. The psychology, if you're used to working from home or you're constantly testing it, you get used to it, But now everyone's been thrown into this. And I remember, Paul, as prepared as I sound, that first week working from home was difficult. It was really difficult. Just managing my calendar, time, felt like hell. I felt more busy than I was at the office. So, but what I'm saying is exactly, BCM can also help prepare your employees mentally around different ways of working and get used to working from home. And in fact, I had to sort out my working space. I never thought I'd have to work from home. So I had to turn my living room into some sort of office. So little adjustments like those as well. I then discovered, since it's winter, that it's very cold. I then had to buy. So all those things, if you're constantly testing your plans, you pick up these things, and then you can better be prepared for it. But to your point, Jabu, I don't think there's any system of absolute control. In compliance, we talk about, control effectiveness. There's no system that will always make sure that nothing goes wrong in a business. There's still human error. There's still so it's a continual review. It's a cycle.
I think that's an interesting point you end with, Bongani, because I'm now thinking or trying to put myself in Reino's space. In the healthcare services, I think a small instance of being unprepared could result in the loss of a person's life. It could result to risk with your staff members. So Reino, can you? I heard you were saying that you implemented training, but I can imagine when a new regulation comes into place, you would need to now train your staff members. You'd need to embed it into your business processes. But I feel so bad for the health industry, and hence why everyone is saying the health services workers are the actual heroes in this time. Because how do you, without having the time, how do you train? How do you embed the new regulations, and at the same time having to deal with the volumes of people coming in? Because I'm sure you're not only dealing with people that are suffering from COVID-19, but there's still accidents, there's still people who are injured, who are hurt in some other way that need your attention. How do you manage all of that?
Java, that's a very good question, and that was one of our biggest challenges initially, because you've got COVID now, but you've still got your, if I can call them your normal sick people. That didn't change. People are still getting sick. We've got an 80% plus occupancy in our medical ward without COVID. So obviously, I think one thing the lockdown did help with was our EC, our emergency center, was definitely less busy because your students are no longer at university. You've got less traffic on the roads, which did ease the burden on the hospital to a degree. But with the levels going down, our challenge is going to increase, because now all of a sudden the students are starting to come back. We're already seeing an increase in road accidents, drinking related crimes, all those type of things. And all of a sudden your EC is getting full again. So you're going to sit with hospitals running over 100% occupancy soon. The challenge has been, the nursing staff are incredible. They're incredible people. And to keep them fresh and to keep them engaged in a time like this, because they're human beings, they're also scared of COVID. It's not like you're a nurse, you're now not scared of anything.
Yes.
That has been a big challenge, but we are very fortunate that early on, we got our doctors. I don't know if everyone understands the industry, but we don't appoint doctors in the private sector. So the doctors work in our hospital, but we don't appoint them. I don't have a say over the doctors, if you can call it that. But we very early on got our doctors very engaged, and our training has been more live training in the ward, where doctors got involved. They spoke to the staff. We had different scenario tests that we did with staff where management also got involved. We gave them opportunities to ask us questions. But our priority has been absolutely to keep the staff happy and engaged, make them feel safe. I think that's a big thing at this stage. Make sure they've got enough personal protective equipment. I'll refer to it as PPE from now on. So if anyone wants to know what it is, make sure they've got visors, they've got masks, they've got the necessary equipment. But training, obviously, when the hospital starts picking up like it has now in May, it becomes more of a challenge. Also, you use a lot of agency staff that you don't necessarily employ, but you get them in for certain periods. And obviously to train them while they're off-site is another one of those challenges. But we've used videos, we've used newsletters to distribute and to train. So in terms of training, we are ready for this whole thing. Like I said earlier, our biggest risk at this stage in South Africa is having enough nursing staff to deal with the volumes that are increasing.
I can imagine. And Paul, to the point that you raised earlier about the mindset, I'm now thinking I'm a nurse or I'm working for any company, and now the announcement of a lockdown is announced. I'm sure without the proper communication and the BCM plans that are put in place, a lot of people were stuck between. So now on a mindset level now, they were stuck between, okay, so now do I not go to work? Do I lose my job if I don't get to work? Do I not get paid because I didn't go to work? Do I risk and go to work? So what can you share with us regarding the mindset on that level? Because I think it's very important, linking up to what Reno is speaking about and the BCM that Bongani spoke to us about.
So I think that's a very good point, Jabu, because with people in the building, everybody is subject to the same news, be it fake or not. And they take things differently. So we can't always see what people's emotional state is like, right? So if people are scared, you've got to give them enough information to allay those fears. But I think one has to be cognizant of the fact that things can escalate. So you've got to make sure that you're not being alarmist in your approach. And I find that transparency works best. So from a personal point of view, in the beginning, when the regulations hadn't been set out yet, we were unsure. So it is not unfair in those circumstances to make certain assumptions and to provide certain guiding principles. So that's what I did. So we said, these are our assumptions. We also said, it's been speculated that the peak will happen in September, or perhaps before then, because one mustn't forget that in the Southern Hemisphere, winter has started, and my goodness, has it started today.
Yeah.
But, and this is ordinarily our flu time anyway. So there are 2 points to it. We've got to be transparent. We've got to not be afraid of making assumptions. And we've got to look at the thing holistically. So we've got to say, where do we find ourselves? This is the situation we're in. What might happen if we consider those factors? So I think it's a case of thinking broader than just replicating what might have been suggested on the news, but saying, how do we see ourselves in a situation for the next, say, couple of months? I mean, we've from a personal point of view, my recommendation has been that we work from home for the foreseeable future. So we are trying our best not to put a date on it. I know certain of the banks are saying they are staying at home for the remainder of the year. Jabu, maybe you can tell us what Standard Bank is doing. But there are certain elements where people are saying, well, they put a peg in the ground. My preference is not to do that because it creates an expectation. My preference is to say, this is what we think might happen. These are our guiding principles, but we're going to communicate with you as much as we can as the time goes on. So we kind of have a staff imbizo every second week, and we give updates in terms of how things are going. But I would like to add a second element. I think what's also very important, and we've seen it work really well with our people, is in our diaries, our HR department have booked, there's a morning yoga session, there's an afternoon meditation session, there's a lunchtime fitness session. And these are all things that people, so it blocks it out in the diaries, which if people are obviously really busy and they can't do it, that's fine. But it blocks out some time and it indicates to people it's time to have a break. And I think that's a very good thing as well, you know, but certainly from our point of view, I mean, that wasn't answering your question at all, but in answer to your question, I think honesty, but not necessarily laying down hard and fast things, especially when we don't know. Rather being authentic and say, we don't know, but we assume that this might happen, and we assume that the circumstances might be this way then. And it's a lot like putting in place a compliance plan, isn't it?
Sorry, my mic was muted. We have a question here from Khomotso Baja. She would like to know what constitutes a full working day, considering that people are now working from home. How would employers measure that? Because other employees might take this as a holiday because they are now working from home. I don't know if anyone has a take on that.
I think it might be different in Raino's environment because there are obviously shifts there, but certainly I think what I alluded to earlier is that when we acknowledge who our employees are and what their circumstances are, then we say we must be a little bit more flexible. And so we are busy working with a flexible work policy, because we understand that certain people, you'll know, even from when we were in the office, certain people arrive at 6:30 or 7 in the morning and need to leave at 3 so that they can pick up their children or whatever the cases are. But now those circumstances might have changed even further. So perhaps they are doing homeschooling and, you know, between 7 and 8:30 is getting their children ready and set up. So one must be flexible, I think. And what's an answer to your question? I think flexibility is key from employers. And I think if that isn't in place, perhaps you've got to, I'm speculating here, I obviously don't know who the employer is, but if you probably got to question whether your employer really understands who you are and cares about your circumstances, because I think for the most part, I think employers would be saying, look, we're flexible now. As long as you get your work done and you get your deliveries out, we understand that your circumstances are different. And this is, you know, uncharted terrain for us, really. I don't know, Bongani, would you like to?
I thought I'd throw that over to you from a psychology perspective. But Jabu, correct me if I'm wrong. I know the regulators, there's some debate about that. I heard a court case where an employees were, saying we're working a bit harder now, the hours have changed. I think it's still subject to some decision. And I know, and I think, just touching on BCM and regulations, the regulators as well are probably, in a similar position of uncertainty. I think Paul said it, that even nationally, we weren't sure what to do. I remember there was a big period where even in the office, like, no, they should let us go home. I mean, there's another case, there's 3 new cases, 4 new cases, and no one's really sure what to do. Thank God we have a disaster recovery, disaster management act, right, nationally that we can invoke, and it triggers a whole set of things. But even then, I mean, the regulations, the fact that sometimes they're ambiguous, I think it shows even our national government, no one has been here before. Paul mentioned unprecedented. So I can imagine, I know I saw something from the FIC basically saying businesses are allowed to do FICA in the way they think is best right now, because we understand you can't collect an originally certified utility bill or ID copy if someone can't, people aren't allowed to drive around and so on and so forth. So I would think, the labor authorities as well are looking into that. You guys would have seen, heard about the unconstitutionality of the regulation, In my head, I was like, obviously it's unconstitutional because these are unprecedented times. It's like war times. Obviously, we're not saying everything is permissible under war, but there are emergencies. I mean, I don't think the government enjoys losing revenue from people not being able to buy their smokes and their cigarettes. but they're doing it because it's a state of emergency. So some things,
Noted.
yes,
Noted,
yeah.
I see. We have, before I get to you, Paul. I see there's also another question as to what are the most important skills that you can expect a compliance officer to have during this tough time. And I think I'm also going to pose that to Reno, because I'm thinking during these tough times, being a compliance officer, what are the skills that you specifically require? Because I can imagine that it's quite hectic on the floor there in the hospitals, the nurses are busy, everyone is busy. So what would be the skills that you would need as a compliance officer in this time? And then I'll come over to you, Paul, for the point that you wanted to raise.
Thank you, Joe. I'm not sure if Bongani is excited that I got that question or what exactly he's busy with there, but I think for me, if I just think very quickly about that one, it's taking a lot of information that changes very, very often and being able to condense it into what's important, what's now most critical, and then be able to communicate that in a way that people that are not in compliance or risk management or understand it and know what to do from there. Because really, as I said, the amount of information we're receiving, it's impossible to do everything, but you need someone that can take that information and condense it for you and prioritize. I think that, for me, is one of the most important skills. I remember from Riani's time at Mediclinic that she also, the amount of information, the amount of acts, it's an incredible amount of information. It's impossible for a management team to deal with everything.
Indeed.
Sorry, Riani?
No, I'm just saying it's indeed, that is the case. And Reno, I think it's also maybe the other skill is, to have a person that can stay calm and be level-headed about this while all of this is going on.
I raised my hand because I I like the soft skills and stuff. And part of, some BCM is also defined as business resilience. So I always love that word, but that's one of the soft skills, right, Paul? Just being resilient during times of crisis.
Absolutely, Bongani, and I think that's why I was alluding to the initiatives to take time out and to do. I mean, look, there were lots of people complaining that we couldn't exercise at all. You can see by the look of me, I'm not one of them, but but and that really, I think, when we talk about whether the limitation of our rights is constitutional or not, I mean, there are constitutional elements that allow for the limitation of rights, and it's got to be rational. So what that court's judgment was talking about is, were the measures employed by government rational? And so I don't want to get into it, but they've obviously drawn the distinction between reasonableness and rationality, and the measure for this very much is rationality. And I think when we look at how our stats have gone and how we are comparative to, even if we look at what happens in New York, we look at what happens in London, and we look at our stats, I've got to say, and it's an entirely own opinion, so I think the measures definitely did give us a chance to help Reno's industry get the necessary readiness. I mean, obviously, we don't know what it might look like in the next coming months, but it certainly stemmed the infection rate for us, for starters. I mean, and I wanted to also talk to your point a little bit about, the FIC said you can do FICA in any which way you think is appropriate. And again, what do we as compliance officers do? We adopt a risk-based approach. It's just, in this circumstance, the risk-based approach is two-pronged. It's got the risk-based approach in terms of who you're going to do the FICA on, number one. And number two, it's got the risk-based approach in terms of, oh, wait, what is the danger that I expose myself and that particular client to? So, one must look at it from that point of view. And I think now all this has done is it's taught us to employ our skills, but in a different way.
Thank you for that. I know it's Monday, one of our committee members. He's also mentioning a good point. He's saying, as compliance officers in our specific industries, the focus for us is normally industry-related compliance risk or exposures. And he's asking, does COVID-19 mean mindset must change and that we should probably have a more holistic approach? Like, does it increase our scope? I think that's a very good question, and I'll pose it also to the floor if anyone is brave enough to answer it.
Sorry, Jabu, I think I missed that. What did Monday say?
Okay, so Monday is highlighting the fact that as compliance officers, traditionally we all focus specifically on our specific industries. So he's asking, does the COVID-19 mean we need to change our mindset, to Paul's point, and have a more holistic approach to compliance instead of just focusing on industry specific? Maybe Reino, you can take us through that as well.
I was trying to dodge that question. It's a difficult question, but I'll give it my best shot. I think I've got a very strong view that the world should have been more prepared for this in the first place. I think we've been talking about pandemics and everything for years and years. Bill
Gates warned us.
Exactly. Bill Gates also spoke about, I think, in November last year. No, I think it was even before that. I can't remember. But I think we definitely have to change our mindset. I think coming from a corporate environment where I was involved in governance, leadership in organizations will have to change their mindset. They'll have to take these things more serious. I think more planning has to go into these type of things. Obviously, COVID-19 is kind of a bit of a special disease, so you can't prepare for everything. But I'm not sure I'm answering the question, but yes, I do think there has to be a change in mindset. If I can use a stupid example, Mediclinic's been advocating hand hygiene for 10 years, been advocating how important it is to wash your hands. No one took it seriously until, I think, end of March 2020, but we've been advocating it from 2010. So yes, there will definitely have to be a change, but that mindset needs to come from the leadership in the organization.
I think to your point, absolutely. Just taking from there, I remember in our discussion earlier, we mentioned, and I think this is a very important point, that in 2008, industries thought the worst thing to happen was the financial crisis. And we thought measures had been put in place, everyone is now prepared. If another financial crisis comes, we'll be able to handle it. And 9/11 then came. And to Bongane's point, BCM was then introduced and stricter measures were put in place to ensure that from a BCM perspective, we are all covered. And then 2020, we have the COVID-19, which is disrupting all of us. And to Bongane's earlier point, we don't know what's going to come next. So it is a whole mindset change that needs to come, and the tone needs to start from the top. I see Riani is raising her hand. Riani, I'm going to give you the floor. I see we only have 2 minutes left.
I have to ask Reino this question. He must know that this one was coming his way. Reino, you were at the governance side of things. You were looking after risk management for Mediclinic South Africa. And then you moved into this position that you're now in, where you're a hospital manager. So you're actually right there at the forefront. How did it change for you from being a risk manager by profession and having that more of an oversight function versus being right there in the thick of things right now?
So Riani, it's been critical, and for me it's been very valuable coming from that background, because having a risk management or a compliance framework and going through those steps, starting with your risk and controls, that's been absolutely critical for me to be able to manage difficult situations. If you don't have that risk management compliance framework in your head of how you go from risk to control and what you're going to do to improve your controls and improve your control effectiveness, I'm not sure how you're going to be able to run a successful business, because at the end of the day, most people look very narrowly at their specific area. I think risk managers, compliance officers see the whole picture. They see the bigger picture. And I think that has been critical for me personally. Obviously, would I have made the move had I known this was on its way? That's a different discussion. But I do think in line with the topic, maybe I think a lot of risk managers and compliance officers might be uncertain about the future, because you're now sitting at home, you're feeling, are we that valuable? I think the need for it is going to increase going forward. I think the role is going to become even more important. going forward.
Sorry, Reno. I would even add compliance and risk people need to be at that strategic planning, strategic making table.
I agree, Bongani.
All these things. So Monday too, I agree with you that there's definitely a need for a broadening of our scope. You know, we don't just narrowly look at identifying risk management, but I'm thinking to the theme as compliance officers, we can be the superheroes. We can we can be the superheroes. You know, telling senior management about all these things, bringing these things to the decision making.
And I hate to finish your sentences, Bongani, but that's all about attitude. It's all about attitude and way of operating.
Tone at the top.
I'm also going to take from your words, Paul. Compliance officers are not only starting to become the heroes now. We've always been the heroes. And to your point earlier, business in most times sees compliance as the handbrake. But maybe as I'll open it to the floor. How can we as compliance officers, as a closing remark in the interest of time, how can we as compliance officers change? It's even a mindset discussion, but how do we change from being the handbrake in the eyes of business to becoming the co-pilot for business? And then maybe we can conclude with that one. And maybe to add on, what is the way forward from here on now? And I see you eager to answer first, so maybe let's start with you.
Not at all. I was actually typing on the chat now, so I missed some of what you said, but I get the sense. Where do we go from now? You know, I'd prepared a whole thing about BCM, so I'll keep talking to that. One of the attendees mentioned that they're busy reviewing or drafting a BCM policy for approval for their board. Absolutely. The timing is right. I think even that board realizes that we need this right now. We weren't ready. How do we stop this from happening again? So practical things, you know, go into your organization, look at, let's assume nothing happened. Well, we know, thank you, the benefit of hindsight. Now we know the worst can happen. Go back into your businesses, have discussions with senior leadership, take stock of where we are, where we're going, what does the future look like post, you know, while we live with the pandemic. Even if we go to level 1, it won't be normal, right, Paul? It still won't be normal. So there's still subtle changes that need to be made, but project even further than that. We can make ourselves invaluable to the business by approaching senior leadership and saying, we not only care about protecting you from fines and penalties, we want this business to be around for another 50 years. So let's start having a conversation about how do we get better prepared for something like this going forward through the lens of business continuity. There's many ways. I'm thinking it's part of re-looking at our strategy, taking stock of where we are, what we need to do, and where we're going. But BCM provides a nice framework. It's got ISO standards, it's got, you know, all sorts of fancy, nice things, but it gives a practical how-to guide. Funny enough, I must mention this. I was Googling, I know a bit, you know, from the office of what we do BCM, but I thought, what's out there? What literature is out there around BCM? And it says, you know, it defines the processes. And part of your risk analysis says map scenarios for things like the first one on Wikipedia was pandemic. I would have thought it would say, you know, what could happen, a flood, terrorist attack. It went first and said pandemic fire. So I'm thinking, okay, even the, you know, the frameworks acknowledge that something like this could happen. So go back to your businesses, take stock of everything that's there. You know, let's look at critical processes, and let's push the conversation to Paul's point. We can try and influence thinking of senior leadership to start thinking in this way, in a risk way. What's the worst that could happen? What do we need to do? How do we prepare now for a future that's uncertain?
If I may, let me add to that, because I think there's a good rhythm here. Certainly, we talked about resilience, and I think another word, and it's not only green, but sustainability is very important now. So I think as compliance officers, my recommendation would be to capitalize on the airtime that you have now, because never before have compliance officers received the airtime that they get now. I mean, as we said in our meeting earlier this week, I've always said we've always been the superheroes. We were just kind of in our Clark Kent mode. We were in a different outfit,
like
right?
That.
So we were in Clark Kent mode, but we were always the ones that were there. Business sometimes had the wrong impression of us in terms of being the handbrake. But with hindsight, a lot of those instances, they would have said, actually, you were right. So, but I think what we've got of late is we've got some really good airtime, and now's the time to capitalize it with the vision of sustainability. I think that's the thing that we need to look forward with a forward-looking view. Sorry, Reino.
I think, Paul, I think, what do they say? Don't waste a good crisis. I think all I can maybe mention is to compliance officers, having been in that world, don't live in the background now. Don't go quiet. I think it's a very important time to influence people. I always believed in, if you want to be successful with risk management compliance, you need to build relationships with stakeholders that buy into it. Use success in one department and take it to the other departments. Be busy. I think that's all I can recommend. I think many people in governance are not proactive enough. We barely know their names. If I'm thinking, I'm sitting here in Potchefstroom, my governance department is in Stellenbosch. If they are not actively proactive, we don't even know who they are. So it's you really need to build those relationships, target people that buy into governance. You always have those people in the organization. There is a new generation that believes in it, and just don't fade away in the background. That's probably my closing advice.
I think that's a perfect way to sum it up, to sum up our whole discussion, and to highlight our theme specifically for 2020, the Youth Day event for 2020, is that compliance, despite the disruption, compliance is emerging as the heroes. I will therefore like to thank all our speakers for today. I will be handing over to Riani. I will give her some time to address us. Riani. After Riani speaks, it will then be the Mentimeter challenge. I will hand over to Marlies to kick us off with the Mentimeter quiz. And I'm so jealous on whoever's going to win. I hope they've been listening and all the answers have been given. The whole memo has been shared. So if you've been listening and engaging with us, you would be able to win the prize. And I can guarantee you it's going to be an awesome prize. Over to you, Riani. Thank you to all our speakers. Thanks.
Thanks, Jabu, and thank you, all of you. It was a very interesting, deep discussion, and I'm sure everybody got a lot of value from that. So if we were in Clark Kent mode up to now, Paul, then I would like to position the Institute as the Daily Planet. So I think
good one.
So the Institute is where it's happening for compliance officers. This is where we train you. Yes, sure enough, we train you on the technical side of compliance, which is important. That's the ticket to the game. But I think more and more as I get involved in this and I speak to a lot of people and I see what's going on at the moment, and I'm listening to the speakers today, it's becoming so important and so clear to me that the technical skills is not what's going to get you through any situation. You can come on our courses, and but Java, you're going to announce what the prize is later, or must I say it now?
Say it now, Riani.
Must I say it now? I can't help myself. You see.
You can say it.
So the prize is a pass to the Introduction to Compliance course that we have. So make sure that you click on the right buttons just now. But as I say, those are the technical skills. What I'm hearing is there's a lot of emphasis on being able to adapt, to be resilient, to be strong-minded, to be able to act in the moment, but still have the judgment. The relationships are so important, as Reino has mentioned. You cannot operate as a compliance officer on an island. And I've got good news, that at the Institute, we've recognized this. You won't only get courses on the technical skills from us, there are also courses on the so-called soft skills. So on that note, I would like to invite everybody that's on the call that is not a member of the Institute yet to please approach us. If you are studying anything at this point risk management related, compliance related, we have a special student rate for you, which is really like a third of the price of a normal membership, but you get all the benefits as if you had joined as a full member. So that's the offer on the table in addition to the price. Is Marlies ready with the Mentimeter?
I'll touch base with her now. Marlies?
Sorry, Jabu.
Oh, okay.
Keeping you in
sorry.
suspense.
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Jabu, if
Sorry.
you can give me 30 seconds just to get it online, then I'll pop back in just now.
All right, no problem. While
Sorry,
we give
Jabu,
Marlies, okay.
while she does that, can I ask maybe Riani just to another, well, from my side, shameless marketing on the mentorship program? Could Riani say a
Yes,
thing or
please.
two?
Yeah. Please do that, Bongani.
I was hoping you would do it, my leader. Just since you were on the floor, but just to let the attendants know that the youth committee has established, a substructure. We've already had a mentorship program, but we want to really professionalize it and structure it properly. So we have that on offer if you would like mentorship, the compliance officer. So typically it's senior compliance officers that have guys like Paul that have been in the industry for some time. And, it's a mentorship program, could be 6 months or a year. We're still mapping out that proper. But if you're interested in mentorship, please send an email, right, Riani, to the Compliance Institute. I'll probably be handling all requests and pairing together with Annette. So we have that on offer as young compliance officers. If you need guidance, support, mentoring in terms of your compliance career, we are there for you.
Yeah, you can send that email. Sorry, Jabu. You can send the email to education@compliancesa.com. If you're interested in joining the mentorship program, both from a mentoring perspective as well as the mentee.
Yes.
I think to add on to what Bongani said, and I see Duronso's comments that she has somebody who wants to mentor. I think it is an open invitation to the members of the Institute who are experienced and who want to mentor someone. We do welcome that. But touch base with the team, Annette, Riani, myself, or Bongani, and we can organize it and get the ball rolling, Duronso. And just to add to what Bongani said, there is huge benefits to having a mentor. At times, I also feel like I need someone who's more experienced, who would be able to steer me in the correct direction. And having a mentor is a great benefit that you'd be getting from the Youth Committee and the Compliance Institute as a whole. I see Marlies is now ready to take us through the Mentimeter. And remember, all Compliance Committee members are excluded. We can have our own Mentimeter after the session. But over to you, Marlies.
Reports. Should I put that they'll be presented by the respective chairpersons?
Yes, please. Thanks, Jabu. Thanks so much.
All right.
Right, everyone. I get to do the fun part of today, which relates to the Mentimeter quiz that we're running. We've run this the last two youth committee sessions, and the prize up for grabs is really worth it. So you would currently see a screen shared with you, which says right at the top, go to www.menti.com. If you mind grabbing your phones and pushing that into your browser, then you'll see it takes you to a Mentimeter site. You can use the code that we have up here, 74280. And then you'll see that it prompts you to activate your profile. Please keep in mind, ladies and gents, this session is recorded, and this profile that you need to quickly create asks you for a username. Please bear in mind that you don't want to be known as the sexy street cat for the rest of your life, should you win this quiz. So just bear in mind that you use
Clark Kent.
Yes, a friendly username. A superhero name. That would be great. Right, you'll see as the icons pop into the middle of the screen that this is everybody joining the session. We'll all be competing against each other to win the prize. And there will be obviously a couple of questions that we'll ask, and you'll need to choose some of them. Right. Everybody popping in. This is great.
It's about 18, yeah.
We need about 39, if I'm not mistaken.
19.
I think it seems like the people who have joined us online don't want to win this prize. I'm happy to take part in this challenge.
Oh, actually, I signed up, but I shouldn't have done that. That's fine. I won't answer anything.
Right. Shall we call it? Shall we continue? Is anybody still struggling
2
to
seconds. Let's give it another
Brilliant.
2 seconds. I like whole numbers, so 20. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. There we go. I think we can start.
Right. Let's start the quiz. So, ladies and gents, you'll see that the fastest answer gets the point. This is the question. The concept of BCM originated from COVID-19, 9/11, or the SA banking sector. You have 15 seconds to answer the question. Please choose the correct one. You can now watch your phones, obviously. We'll go through the questions. Time's up. Right, across the board. The correct answer here was 9/11. Well done. Let's see how the leaderboard looks. Right, congratulations to everybody that got it right. FedEx, well done. You did it in the fastest time. Excellent. Here we go for the next question, ladies and gents. What is the biggest risk that the health industry is facing now?
Sure.
An insufficient number of hospital beds, shortage of PPE, or shortage of medical staff, doctors, nurses, and support staff.
Wow.
8 more seconds on the clock.
That's a tricky one.
Gave us this one.
I'm inclined to think all of them.
Right. Congratulations
well
to the
done.
11 that got it right. Shortage of medical staff, doctors, nurses, and support staff. Let's see what the leaderboard says now.
FedEx.
Yo, FedEx. Ooh, close.
It's a close one.
Wonder Woman taking the lead. Well done. FedEx still on top. Nikki and Nadia K. You're close. You're close.
Right.
Let's see the next question. Which key controls did Drano implement in the hospital? Internal and external command centers for decision-making purposes, enhanced screening capabilities, or tracing of COVID-19 positive patients. 8 seconds on the clock remaining. Time's up. Correct answer is, well done. Internal and external command centers.
Okay.
Let's see what the leaderboard says.
FedEx is losing
Wonder
ground.
Woman.
Oh,
Wow.
close. Let's see. Nikki, well done. Moves to the top of the leaderboard. Let's see. Next question. Business sees compliance as a handbrake. What type of mindset should CEOs have to win business over? Business mindset, a growth mindset, or a co-pilot mindset? 13 seconds on the clock. Time's up. Correct answer is the co-pilot mindset.
Yeah.
Well done. Let's see what the leaderboard says. Who got it the first and got it the fastest?
Yay.
Nadia,
Oh
okay.
dear.
Absolutely.
Wow. Do we have a tie? Oh, Nadia, wow.
Wonder Woman was the fastest though on that question. Well done.
Well
Right.
done. Well done.
Let's see. I think this is the last question, ladies and gents.
So please be quick.
What is the
guys.
key trait the compliance officer should have? A key trait. Should be talkative. Bossy. It's your views. We need to be agile, have an agile mindset. 11 seconds left on the clock.
It's obviously talkative, guys, you know.
I go for bossy.
I think that's us, guys. We're the talkative ones.
Well done,
Oh, wow.
ladies and gents. Well done. Let's see who got it the fastest finger first. Let's see who got it. Leaderboard.
It's Nadia. Is she?
Oh,
Wonder Woman is always so quick.
that was very close.
Wow.
Nadia!
Wow.
Congratulations, Nadia. Over to you.
Nadia, please send us your name on the chat portion. And congratulations for winning.
Yay. Well done, Nadia.
Or maybe we should actually ask Nadia to show us her face on screen.
Yes, please.
Yes.
Yeah, let's put her so we can congratulate her.
Come, Nadia, don't be shy. It seems Nadia's shy.
There she is, Nadia Klemke. Okay.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much to everyone who joined our session today. We are closing the session at 11:30. We have 8 minutes left. Well done to Nadia. I am so jealous. It is an awesome prize that you've won. And just in closing, I would just like to appreciate and thank our speakers and the presenters today. Reno, Paul, Bongani, thank you very much for all you have done. You have given your time to us, and we really appreciate it. I'm sure everyone who has joined our webinar today has taken as much as they could from us. And I would like to invite everyone that the conversation can keep flowing. So we are not limited only to 11:30 because we are living in the digital age. You are welcome to continue engaging us on our social media pages. We are on LinkedIn, we are on YouTube, we also on the Compliance Institute website. So you are welcome to continue.
And Facebook.
And Facebook, yeah. So please continue engaging us. You can continue asking your questions. We will try and slip those questions through to our speakers, even though it won't be on a live camera like now, but we are going to keep the conversation flowing. Thank you so much to everyone. Riani, Bongane, I don't know if you guys have any closing remarks. And thanks to the committee for helping me and everyone set up today. It was very stressful. We have been up and down planning and making sure it's executed perfectly. And I believe our 2020 Youth Day was a success, similarly to the one that happened last year. 2019 was also a great success. And I'd like to thank the committee. And Annette and Riani, you have been our backbone. None of this would have been possible without you guys. And I'd like to say we appreciate you and thank you so much. If anyone else would like to share something.
I think from my side, Jabu, returning that compliment and saying nothing would have happened without the committee. So thank you to you guys for all the effort and to our speakers. And I forgot to say that we do hand out cloaks as well at the Institute, you know, to the superheroes. But you have to write the board exam first. So we have the compliance practitioner SA designation, and we have a compliance professional SA designation. So if you're interested in getting those cloaks, be in contact, please.
Okay. Chairman, Jabu.
I think our chairman has the same energy saving requirements that your company has, Jabu. I mean, Bongani.
Bongani, yes.
You have to keep the lights on, Jabu.
That's true. Hey, Jabu, you disappeared on us.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I just got a notification that my laptop was switching off.
Oh,
So I
just
just
in
plugged
time.
it through the charger. Sorry, did I miss something?
No, I think Riani was done thanking everyone, thanking you as well. Yeah, I think a heartfelt thank you from me. Gentlemen, it was a pleasure to meet you. Paul, Reno, looking forward to interacting more in the future. Thank you everyone. Thank you to the people who attended, and hopefully you got something out of it. And like Jabu said, the conversation carries on. Reach out to us for mentorship. And reach out to the Compliance Institute for courses and so on and so forth. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, guys. Reno and Paul, I hope we're going to keep the conversation flowing.
Sure. Thanks. Anytime.
Thanks for your time.
Yeah, for sure.
Cheers, everyone.
Thanks,
Thank you very much, everyone. Good luck.
Bye.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Jabu.
Cheers, guys.
Bye.
Bye.